Hi everyone, this is Tim Young with Elevate Software, and in this video I'm going to introduce you to Elevate Web Builder 2, a rapid application development environment that allows you to create beautiful, full-featured web applications that run in any modern browser. Elevate Web Builder uses the strongly typed Object Pascal language and transcodes the Object Pascal code into a single JavaScript application file during compilation. The Elevate Web Builder compiler checks all type usage to ensure that there are no problems with how classes, variables, properties, and methods are declared and used. If there are any problems, an error is displayed and the application simply doesn't compile. A whole class of potential runtime errors is erased simply by using Elevate Web Builder. Object Pascal supports class types and has a formal inheritance model. Elevate Web Builder uses this inheritance model in its runtime and component libraries, maximizing code reuse and keeping the emitted JavaScript application as small as possible. The Elevate Web Builder runtime and component libraries push all core functionality far down into the base classes of the libraries. And this results in a solid building blocks approach to application development that increases productivity without sacrificing performance or stability. Most importantly, the Elevate Web Builder IDE includes a WYSIWYG form designer and control interface editor that allow the developer to visually build applications and controls. To show how easy this is, I'm now going to create a small sample application in the Elevate Web Builder IDE. To create an application, click on the New Project option on the Welcome page. Because we're creating a visual application, we'll go ahead and select the Visual Project with Form Support option next. Now we need to select the base form class to use for the main form of the visual application. We'll just stick with the standard tform class and click on OK. Elevate Web Builder allows the developer to create new form classes and use those as the basis for their forms. The standard component library includes several such form classes in addition to the default tform class. Included are form classes for generic dialogues, message dialogues, and progress dialogues. We've now got a blank main form that we can begin to use to create our application's user interface. But before we go any further, I would like to point out one important feature of Elevate Web Builder. Every visual control in the component library has one or more control interfaces associated with it that can be modified to change the look and feel of the control. For example, we can change the default background color of the default tform control by clicking on the Open Interface Toolbar button in the Form Designer. This opens the Control Interface Editor, which allows you to modify all aspects of the interface for a given control. After modifying a control interface, you can simply rebuild the component library, and any changes to the interface will appear accordingly at design time and runtime. Also, because control interfaces are included by the compiler using the compiler's defined search paths, you can swap out control interfaces by simply modifying the component library or project's compiler search paths. Now, back to the application. Let's first adjust some of the main form's layout properties. We'll specify that the form should be positioned at the top left of the application surface and should stretch to the bottom right of the application surface. The application surface in an Elevate Web Builder application is a special container control that contains all forms and any other child controls added to it. By default, it is automatically sized to fit the browser viewport, but you can also change its layout and sizing just like any other control. For example, the example applications that ship with Elevate Web Builder dynamically define a minimum height constraint for the application surface that is slightly larger than the main form, and then turn on the vertical scroll bar for the browser in order to handle any cases where the browser viewport is sized smaller than the application surface height. Now we can start creating the user interface using the main form. This is as easy as clicking on a component in the component palette and then clicking on the form's client area in the Form Designer. To illustrate, we'll add a few controls on the form and build a rudimentary application. We'll start with a header panel. Let's add an icon and caption to the header panel and change their layout so that they're positioned to the left and centered and consume space toward the right of the header panel. Also, we'll select one of the default icons in the icon library to display the icon control. Next, we'll add a scroll panel to the form and change its layout properties so that it's positioned to the top left, stretches to the bottom, and consumes space toward the right of the form. Next, we'll add a panel to the scroll panel and change its layout properties so that it's positioned to the top left, stretches to the right, and consumes space toward the bottom of the scroll panel. Let's spruce up the panel a bit by changing its caption bar background fill color to something less gray. You'll notice that we're using a special color identifier. Elevate Web Builder's UI functionality ships with a basic set of predefined blue, green, orange, red, gray, and black colors in light, normal, and dark shades. We'll also change the panel's Allow Close property to false. This will prevent the panel from being closed by the user. Now we can just copy and paste the panel to create a couple more panels. And to make sure that the panels will always be accessible, let's change the scroll panel scroll bars property so that the vertical scroll bar is enabled. You'll notice that the scroll panel's scroll bar is active and usable at design time. Elevate Web Builder allows component developers to specify that certain UI elements in their visual controls should receive design time mouse events. In addition to the scroll bars, several controls in the standard component library use this feature. For example, the page panel control adds a button that is only visible at design time, and you can click to add a new page to the control. Okay, we've now got a set of menu panels on the left side of the form, and we're going to now add a data-bound grid to the rest of the form's client area in order to display some data. But before we do so, let's also add a sizer control to the form in order to allow the user to resize the width of the scroll panel on the left. Continuing on, we'll go ahead and add a grid control and change its layout properties so that it's positioned to the top left, stretches to the bottom right, and consumes space toward the bottom right of the form. We'll also turn off its border. Of course, the grid control won't do much good without a dataset to bind to, so let's add one. To add a dataset, we'll simply drag one of the example application datasets from the Dataset Manager and drop it on the form. Then we can bind the grid control to the dataset by changing the grid control's dataset property. We're almost ready to run the application, and we now just need a little bit of coding. We need to load the dataset rows using the global database's load rows method. So we'll add that code first in the form's onShow event handler. Finally, we'll add some code to show progress when loading the dataset rows. Okay, we can now click on the Run Toolbar button to run the application in the IDE. As you can see, we can minimize and restore each menu panel, as well as resize the scroll panel on the left side. In addition, we can automatically sort on the grid columns as well as edit the grid data. These are all default behaviors of these controls. So, that's all there is to it. We've just built a basic application in a few minutes that will run on any desktop, laptop, tablet, or mobile device running a modern browser. In summary, Elevate Web Builder allows the developer to be immediately productive by using a visual, building blocks approach to developing web applications. The end result is rapid application development for web applications and a drastic reduction in your development costs. Do yourself a favor and download a trial version today using the link in the description below the video. And as always, please feel free to contact us at any time with any questions or comments you may have. And thank you very much for your time.